Welcome to Inspiring Women in Audit, the only podcast celebrating the achievements and journeys of women in the internal audit industry. In each episode, we spotlight the extraordinary stories, insights, and expertise of these dynamic professionals. Our aim is to amplify their voices, inspiring a new generation of women auditors to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. Remember to check our show notes for links to our social media channels and to subscribe to the Inspiring Women in Audit newsletter. This podcast is brought to you by I4 Global Results Limited, the audit communication experts, dedicated to transforming your audit reporting and your audit results through communication, optimization, and collaboration. Now, let's dive into this episode of Inspiring Women in Audit.
I'm excited today to welcome Dr. Sabine Charles to the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. Dr. Charles is the Chief Audit Executive at Touro University in the U.S., where she is the architect of all things audit-related at the university. In the CAE role, Sabine is a strategic advisor within the institution and leads by example in building stakeholder relationships. She's also committed to guiding and developing her team, which is essential for their growth and the institution's financial and operational strength. Sabine is also the founder of Charles Financial Strategies, LLC, and the TAPA Institute, which is dedicated to helping individuals achieve their career ambitions, such as by helping them obtain professional certifications like the CIA and CPA. As a speaker, Sabine focuses on leadership and emotional intelligence for auditors, including her leadership MEQ work, and on how EQ and AI intersect in audit, a very important hot topic in our industry today. Her many credentials include professional certifications such as the CIA, CISA, CISM, CFE, and CRMA. And she holds a doctorate in business administration, no less. We've worked a bit with each other over the last 5 years, but this is the first time we've really been able to sit down and dive into her work as a chief audit executive, author, and speaker. Sabine, welcome to the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for you to be here today. And I was wondering, because I had a peek at your LinkedIn profile, of course, and was wondering kind of what your audit origin story is, and if there were, specific experiences from the beginning days, the early days that shape your experiences today.
Well, as you peeked into my LinkedIn, you may notice that my first degree is French and Spanish literature, which is unusual for most auditors. So I had a different perspective coming into the industry. My first job gave me an opportunity for me to travel and see the world, living in Brazil and also in Panama. And having those two experiences gave me not only understanding of the bank that I joined, but also the culture that is so critical, the people around internal audit.
So there's a level of curiosity there, I think, when we're learning languages and living in other countries that may kind of inform what you do as a chief audit executive.
Exactly. Curiosity is the core of internal auditors, right? We are nosy. We would like to know. We want to know how and why. And that is one of the things that really translated into what I studied in college, understanding the rules, the grammatical rules of a language, understanding how to communicate, understanding why is it this way while in another language is this way. Those skills were poured into understanding the process. What are the risks? What are the controls? Are they properly mitigating those risks? So those are the type of skill sets that's foundational that I now still use today as the CAE at Touro.
And it seems like root cause might fall quite nicely into that as well when you're talking about what are the differences between the languages and trying to figure out why.
Mm-hmm. And so this is what's so fascinating. When I was in Brazil, we were there to not audit, but build relationships. And we gave them free audits, we call them, where we go in, we evaluate, and it doesn't hit the board. It actually we shared with them some of the findings and concerns we had to build rapport and relationship. Because without that, it's very difficult to get information.
I think that's brilliant because, in my youth, I used to say that the audit report was the product of internal audit. And then I got a little older and a little wiser. And I look at it now as two things, relationships and reporting. Because somehow, and it may not be reporting and writing, it's at least communicating the results of the audit. But I think back in the day, which could be even, 5 to 10 years ago, we weren't looking at building relationships as such an important skill. Whereas I think today, the aha moment has, happened, and we all really know that we need to focus on those communication skills and building and nurturing relationships to be successful as internal auditors.
See, in the past, we used to call them soft skills, and I just didn't really sit well with me. Soft skills means weak. Like, that's just how your brain, how my brain works. And I think those skills that we're talking about are really strategic skills.
I love that.
Strategy building skills. That's what we use when we're doing fraud investigations, really understanding how people think and why they did what. And not to say that we're doing this type of interrogation with our auditees, but the importance of understanding what are their goals, what are their business initiatives, and how are we adding value. We like to throw those words around, adding value. And adding value is not just only finding 14 errors in a pile of paper or data sets and saying, okay, you have a deficiency. We have to understand the business impact. And now with the world that it is, having AI doing some of those mundane type of activities, we now have to shift into more of an advisory perspective, not just looking assurance and saying, okay, tick mark this, tick mark that, or finding here, finding there, and then give them the report and walk away. We have to kind of put a story behind it. So now we have to be storytellers. We have to talk business, but also think audit. For us to be successful in a career that is being, I want to say infiltrated, but being changed with AI or technology. It's not just AI, because we've been talking about data analytics for a while and things like that. With technology being so into our day-to-day lives and professional lives, now us introverts and some extroverts, but mostly introverts, will now have to figure out communicating the story behind the data that's being shared.
I mean, that's so important, because I think data doesn't say anything unless you help the data speak. You have to interpret it for your audit client with your business partner so that they understand what it means. And I do think that's an area where auditors struggle. Some auditors don't see it as their role. Sometimes I don't even see conclusions in an audit report. And I'm like, you've got to tell me what it means. Don't just tell me there are 14 issues that you've identified. What does it mean? Tell me what it means. It's just so critical. And the other thing I look at that you sparked was also look at what they're, not just at their goals and things, but I like to look at where the pain is. Understand where the pain points are, because sometimes audit can help take some of that pain away depending on the situation and the environment.
This skill that we're talking about is a skill that it's like a muscle. It's like a muscle. The more we exercise it, the stronger it becomes. And that exercise is really kind of, you build it through feedback, right? You build it from reflection and quality. So it's constantly, you may not be great at it at the beginning. I mean, think about it. When we started doing auditing way back when to now, I mean, we have a different perspective if we have audit judgment or professional judgment.
Right.
That's stronger now than when we first started. And it's the same thing with EQ.
And I think back to that. I tell this story on stage a lot at industry conferences where I was the senior auditor on site at a U.S.-owned bank in Canada, and we had just done the mortgage-backed securities audit, which we know created huge issues in the banking system and in the financial system. And we had a 50-page audit report, and I had to run the closing meeting. I had the privilege of running the closing meeting, and there was the CEO, the CFO, the head of legal, and 6 other older gentlemen in suits. And I was 27 years old, fresh out of Deloitte.
Oh,
Nobody,
I worked at Deloitte too.
nobody told you what a good internal audit report looks like. Nobody told you how to run a closing meeting. Nobody told you how to reconcile conflicts or conflicting goals and objectives. Nobody taught us to even think about what their goals for the meeting might have been.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just there were a lot of things that I just had no idea of at 27. And I think it was crazy back then, like the wild, wild west almost. And now at least this is why I do what I do, right? So and probably a lot why you're an educator as well is because we want to equip people so that they can be more successful earlier on and not have some of the road bumps that maybe we went through.
You know what? I think hindsight is always 2020. Because 20 years from now, hopefully, we'll be looking back and like, what were we doing with this AI thing? This was a joke. And so just like when we're looking back now and we're figuring out what we were doing back then, it was a joke. So I think and this is why this is so important, the sharing, and because I'm an educator, right? The sharing of knowledge, building from the past to make the future better, not only for individuals, but ourselves and for the profession. As we're getting more inputs, data inputs, we could reject or accept or modify. And that's what we're doing. So when we look back, we're using the lens, we're using the lens of the future or now looking back, and it's like, what was going on? And when we were in the middle of it, it was real.
It was real and it was stressful and there was a lot of pressure and we thought we knew what we were doing. But as I look back on my 27-year-old self, I think she didn't know much.
And when we're going to look back at ourselves, we may say the same thing.
Yeah.
Because because you know what it is? We're constantly evolving. I would hope. I'm hoping we're constantly evolving.
So let me ask you then, you talk a lot about EQ and AI, audit, and you've spoken about it, I know, at least one industry conference. From your perspective, how do emotional intelligence and AI work together to create better auditors in practice?
Well, AI really provides us with the results, right? It helps us not get stuck in the details. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier in our conversation. So AI is giving the auditors the ability to get information faster so decision makers can access it. EQ is explaining it and putting it into context. And those combinations, so if I'll say AI won't take the jobs of auditors, I don't think it'll replace auditors. However, if auditors don't use AI, those are the ones who probably fall on the wayside.
I think so too, because there are a lot of mundane tasks that auditors are used to doing. There's a lot of data analytics now that's happening. And we as individual human beings don't need to be doing that work anymore because we have something that's way more efficient and that gets results and that can cover all transactions instead of 117 transactions that we might have done in the day when I was an auditor, right? So I think I think it's a good thing to some extent. I think there are a lot of risks and there will be bad actors and there will be all those different things going on. But I think for audit, I hope for some auditors out there, it's exciting to see the possibilities of where they could be spending their time instead of some of the slogginess of the tasks where they are spending their time today.
And it's a fine line. It's like having a cell phone. Back in the day, we had the Rolodex or your brain. right? And do you remember numbers now? I don't think so. We have the phone to really help us with that. So there's a fine line of where it becomes good or bad or useful or not useful. And using it, that's the ethical piece of AI, because there's biases in the data, just like we have biases ourselves. So it's not a purely objective tool because it's run by subjective people.
Right. And I think back to, when I was doing my research at university, for example,
Mhm.
I mean, we referred to a lot of books, to be honest, and then
Mhm.
we had to put our take on layer over top of that. And it's kind of
Mhm.
the same thing, is that AI goes out and uses all the resources that it has access to. But then we've still got to have a look at what it brings forth and say, do I agree? Does it make sense in terms of environment and culture and context?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is just a tool that we have. I don't think it's going to replace us, but people who are not embracing the the change in our environment or using this new tool may be left behind. And emotional intelligence on the same thing. They have to learn AI and they have to learn EQ because EQ, emotional intelligence, is learned. No one is born, I believe, as a leader. We all learn. And this is where my framework comes into play, the leadership MEQ thing, where we talk about mindset. Like if you don't know yourself, you cannot lead. And emotional intelligence is really understanding the other person who's receiving it. And then the Q in leadership MEQ is the leadership qualities that are essential for success, which includes networking, continuous learning. Those type of things are essential for not only for auditors, but any professional who wants to continue to grow and become that professional expert in their field. And so what we do in my department is that every time we finish an audit, we actually use the EQ tool for us to evaluate. We take the mirror and we look at ourselves. And that's one of the circles in our thing. Reflection. Reflection. Because without reflection, then we will continue to do the same type of behavior in the past. Looks like how you reflected of your 27-year-old self so that you now are more wise. And so every audit, we do this reflection and using this tool and we reflect and we incorporate and we have open forums. Everyone is involved, not just me. Sometimes I even leave the room because I want them to talk. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's brilliant.
So that they could start thinking about ways and then they tell me, oh, Sabine, we were thinking about this or this. I'm like, okay, let's try it.
I like to do that too. Like in my training, I'll say to the leadership team, okay, let's step out of the room for a minute and let them talk, because it's so easy for the CAE or the next level down to inject their opinion, and then everybody else kind of shuts down and just kind of goes with what they have.
Mhm. Yeah. And this is why we have these open discussions. And once a quarter, because a lot of my staff are remote.
Mhm.
What we do once a quarter, we meet up and we go through some strategy, internal audit strategy, and we do a bonding exercise. So last time we did it, we went to a VR event. It was quite fun. My staff people loved it. They're like, can we do this again? I'm like, okay. But it was okay for me. But they enjoyed it. So we'll do it again. And the point is that we're human beings. We need connection. And we're working so hard as auditors, and we're always trying to do our best and have the most correct data in front of senior leaders, that the pressure is there to produce. And when you're in your home working remotely, that connection, that water cooler conversation, that break that we should take is lost on TikTok and LinkedIn and stuff like that, things that we need to maybe just take a break and walk away from the computer. So those meetings that we have quarterly is an attempt to do that. reconnecting the department, and also start talking and thinking about strategy, not just operational success, trying to get things done.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think meeting quarterly and then focusing on strategy as well, because I think there's a risk that we don't focus on strategy enough. We're so busy executing that we're not focused enough on where we're going, and we're not looking far enough out. We're just to the end of our field of vision, and we're so focused on getting those tasks done.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a challenge though, but we're doing it every quarter.
I think that's brilliant. So let me ask you then, it's kind of a follow on, maybe in my mind, it ties a little bit to the whole AI conversation, because you talk about the importance of critical thinking for auditors.
Right.
And I'm wondering, like, because you run a team, how do you spot or identify the level of critical thinking skills in your team? And then how do you help your team develop those skills? Because I think they're so crucial today. And with the advent of AI, even more crucial.
We take personality tests in my
Which ones?
department. Yeah, we do that. And we take the EQ test. We have a survey. I have a survey through the Leadership EQ program that we actually, I shared it with my staff people, and so that we could better understand each other.
Mhm.
Critical thinking, and I think everyone has a skill. Everyone has a learning style. Everyone has a gift. And my job as the CAE is to tap into my department's gift. Each
I love that.
person's gift, because everyone's different. And I'm just thinking about 4 people in my department right now, totally different, but think critically differently. One person is very detail oriented. You go to any meeting, he is a sponge. He is like the AI recorder of meetings, able to kind of really understand and recall who said what, how, when. Another person is brilliant in Excel. He's just amazing in just any type of data analysis. My other guy, he's great in enterprise risk management initiatives, connecting with the leadership team, being chummy with the admins, making sure that we know about certain meetings so we can interject ourselves and crash the party. Because who wants to invite an auditor to a departmental meeting? Nobody. So I have my guys, because we have a marketing plan in my department. I really do. And we
I
have a
think that's
marketing
good.
plan. Huh?
I think that's really great to have a marketing plan. Every audit team should have a marketing plan.
Mm-hmm. We have a marketing plan, and part of the marketing plan is to present at meetings, at various department meetings, just to tell them about audit or tell them about certain type of risk that pertains to them. Nothing to do with when we're going in to do an audit, but just sharing information, and then we leave. We don't stay at the whole meeting. So then again, this is unusual for the auditor to come in and talk to us just to talk about our process without giving us a report or telling us how bad we're doing, because that's how they see it. So we go in, we share, they ask questions, we respond, and then we leave. This is what I mean by building relationships. And my staff people, in terms of critical thinking, they have critical skills that are collectively makes us, and I'm just going to brag about my guys. They make them the A team. Them the A team. I don't consider me being I'm part of the A team, but they're really the A team because they get stuff done. And the brilliance of my team makes it a joy to work at Toro. And I've been there 14 years.
So it's almost like there's a specific culture within the audit team.
Yes.
And how do you foster that? By empowering them to go out and let their own superpower fly and be free? Or
So this is what I do. In addition to doing the Leadership MEQ assessment after every audit, we have quarterly performance evaluations, which most companies do that. But I plan their exit. I said, person X, how long do you want to stay in this department? We plan their exit. And I said, what do you want to get out of this department while you're here? and I will do my best to make sure you get what you want. And when they're ready to leave, they tell me ahead before they even start looking. That's how I run my department. They tell me ahead of time. They say, oh, Sabine, I'm thinking about leaving. I was like, okay, you need any help with my network? I'll help you. I just like, at the end of the day, I want you to be whole. I'm not, even though I selfishly, yes, I would like them to stay. But the thing is that I can't force anyone to stay. And at times they help me interview their replacement. So the way I keep the culture going at Turo in my department. Oh, and by the way, we got an award as super auditors from the board a couple of years ago. I should send you a picture of it. I was like, I was so
Absolutely.
confused. I went to the board meeting. They were like, Sabine, you need to go. I was like, so what do I have to prepare? Tell me what I need to bring. They're like, no, just come. And I was like, what's going to happen? And they just gave me an award saying they're so grateful that they have an internal audit department like ours.
I mean,
Go
mic drop.
figure. Go figure. So I was like, wow, we must be doing something right. And that really speaks to my staff's professionalism. How we always, sometimes the client are not nice. I'm not going to try to tell you they're nice. They're not. But my staff people they always say, oh, you guys are always professional. Even though we're like, with that said, keeping focused on my individuals in my staff's person's goals and having that in mind helps them to feel comfortable enough to share and be open.
I love that. And the whole concept of you're here now, when are you leaving kind of thing. I was having this conversation with a client just in the last 2 days where in some audit shops, there are career auditors. And in other audit shops, it's really more of a talent rotation, whether it's rotating within the business or rotating out. Is absolutely fine. Obviously, you'd like to keep that talent in the business, but I think it is a culture thing. And at the risk of alienating some of my listeners, I think when we have a lot of career auditors, I can't tell you what percentage it is. When your team is made up significantly of career auditors, I think the average age of auditors tends to be higher, which sometimes, not always, makes the taking on of new ideas or innovation perhaps a little bit less quick, if I can say that.
Yeah, so let me add to what's being said here, because there are about 5 generations of working in the workplace, and each generation, and this is a stereotype. Not every generation has the same,
Right.
but just in general, there are 5 different generations in the workplace. And with that, they have 5 different goals. Then you have to put the layer of culture, personal desire. And that's why it comes down to looking into what people want, what they want to get out of it. Being a career auditor may not be bad if they could actually be like the pillar or the stability
Foundation. Yeah, the stability.
foundation. Thank you for that department. And they can be the ones who help train or provide certain type of
Quality assurance.
doing QAR. We do QAR in my department too. QAR on the audit, so that way, because they have such vast knowledge on what can be or what can happen. I hear you. I think what's needed, and we were talking about diversity earlier, that's the diversity of thought I was referring to earlier before we started recording. Because diversity of thought. And yes, a career auditor is fine, but we don't want to have everyone to be a career auditor. We don't want the department to be every 6 months rotating, because we need stability and we need work product. We do get evaluated by producing something. So we have to at least produce and have some type of stability and sustainability of quality in the department. And that's a fine balance. That's a fine balance.
I
And
think you need both, to be
yeah,
honest.
I really do. I agree with that point. Sure.
So if we talk about, inside team culture, and then if we could take a wider step back and maybe broaden it to say, organizational culture. So I've been to university. I have not worked at a university. I'm just wondering, maybe in general, from your perspective as a chief audit executive, how you work within the culture of your organization, and are you able to influence it, and how does that impact your relationships outside of audit?
The president of the institution is amazing because he believes and understands the value of internal audit. And that really stems to, and that's really the driver, the tone at the top. So if you're in an organization that doesn't value internal audit, then you could either try to change the culture or maybe find something that aligns better with your core values. That's really the advice. And the culture, I've worked at investment banking. I worked at banking, at Deloitte, and various other, I worked at American Express. So I've had a career vast in different industries, but it comes down to what is the business objective and how can we add value to that? We, internal auditors, add value to the people who are making decisions. If we're not doing that and answering that question, then we need some work to be done. And that's how you align audit to the business. So understanding, speaking the language, going back to my languages, speaking the language of business or speaking the language of university or speaking the language of bank X or speaking the language of company Y is important, because if we don't speak that language, we then start misinterpreting and communication breakdown exists. That happens.
So if you were to give advice to a new chief audit executive about how to work within the culture of the organization and how to build relationships with the senior leaders, what advice would you give them?
Crash parties.
Crash parties.
You have to crash the party. So what does that mean? Attempt to get invited to the meetings where decisions are being made.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I like that. And I feel because I thought my question would go in a different direction, but it sounds to me like you're in a really great environment where you have tone from the top support and you've built all these great relationships. So how do we then share that with our audience and say, here's some things that you can do if you're not in this kind of really supportive, appreciated environment for internal audit?
This didn't happen overnight. It took
Right. So what are
many
your
years,
secrets?
many years of crying. and nights going, what am I doing? Right? So it's not just like, oh, it's just great right now. We are still learning and shifting in my department as we maneuver through the external environments, the risks that exist that are affecting universities. And so we need to shift as risk shifts. We also, as a department, need to shift. So as a new CAE, the advice I would give you is, one, pick one process to use AI and test it to give you the bandwidth you need so that you can have the time to build relationships. Because what happens, we get bogged down with the process. We don't audit our process really the way we should audit the process. So now we have AI. Get one process in your department and use AI. Start small and get that more efficient. Number 2, meet with leaders before you have any audit findings. Like I said, crash the parties. Crash the parties. And then number 3, empower your staff to crash their parties, because there are multiple parties happening in any environment.
I see a
So
LinkedIn
that
post.
is how.
You should write a post on Crash the Party.
You
Seriously.
should tag me, my dear.
No, you can, no, it's your idea. I just think it's great because you have the context. No, I think that's great advice for our new CAEs because, um, as you know, and as I'm sure you've probably experienced, when we get promoted, we don't always know how to do the job in full when we get promoted. So we're learning on the job and we're making our mistakes and
You bring a good point. You know what it is? Now, with LinkedIn, you're one person away to get advice.
right?
So you go into your network, or you go into your network, or go look at your other episodes of
Or the
individuals.
Inspiring Women in Audit LinkedIn group.
Hello? That was not the intended plug, but why not?
Oh, I know. But we have over 500 women in the group.
So then there's the resource. That's the innovation. Thinking outside of the box, as we say.
Right?
Right? So self-reflection, your core values, and innovation. Again, that's that circle around that leadership EQ. And then that really honing in on yourself and the individuals you serve and the learned techniques that have worked for years should be embraced by the new CAE out there.
I love that because I do think not everybody has the same mindset, but I do think for some of us, a lot of it is about service. It's like understand the service that we're providing and be of service to others is to help them on their journey.
Be of service, but don't sacrifice yourself.
Absolutely.
I guess that, that's again the fine line. Everything is it's like accounting, a debit and credit, a balance.
Because you've written about balance as well. You have a book about balance, don't you?
Yes, I do have a book about balance. And that's what I mean, balance, the foundation. So yes, you serve, but don't sacrifice. Because if you sacrifice, then you cannot serve. Another post on LinkedIn.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that.
This is I have a plethora of these type of things.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So I wanted to ask a little bit of advice because I have a team that I'm working with who are struggling, and I was wondering if I could get your perspective. So I've worked with this company for some years, off and on. It's not a regular thing. It's just every, let's say 3 years, we come back together. But the organization has changed significantly. There's a new board. There's a new head of audit who has lit a fire, essentially.
Positive fire, or
I think so, but it's such a different way of operating and a different way of thinking. And a lot of the team, not all the team, but a lot of the team have been in their roles for 5 years, some of them for much longer. And in just that 5-year period, they've had 3 heads of audit. They haven't all been short. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they're in that 5-year period. This is the 3rd head of audit. And culture is changing. Culture within the team is changing. Culture within the organization is changing. But I feel like it's hard for some of those auditors to see the benefit of the change, to see the benefit of moving with more agility and being able to respond quicker. And I think that's a challenge for this CAE.
Let me give you a different perspective on this. We may want to consider looking at the perspective of the staff. Based on what you just told me, these individuals have had 3 heads within a time frame. So they have whiplash. So now they're like, we're done. Wouldn't you be done? Yeah, you're going, okay. The first time you're like, okay. And then they like, all right, they lost momentum here. Then you have a second person. All right, I don't like this person, but this person has a good idea. Oh, they're gone. Now the third person is here, and you're looking like, I'm not going to waste my time. So that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. The new CAE may have brilliant ideas, but now his job is harder because now they're jaded. And they may not necessarily want or trust or believe he or she is going to be there for a while. That's what I'm hearing. So I would, if he were my client or we did the Leadership MeQ program or figure out what's what, or we go into the department, what we would need to do is really understand the relationship or the sentiments of his staff first, because they have legacy, and who wants change? First of all, who wants change?
It takes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, we don't like that. We're human beings. That's just fact. And so now they've gone through it a couple of times. They're just fatigued. That's what that sounds like.
So how would you handle that?
Like I said, you have to start infiltrating the fear or the resistance from the team, because that person is not going to be successful, because they're going to be people who are not on purpose to sabotage, but just perhaps may disconnect and not support and be cohesive as an internal audit function. So that would work first internally.
That means for me is for the CAE to be building relationships with the team on an individual level and as a whole team level.
Exactly. That's where I see it.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, thanks for your perspective on that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about audit reports, because audit reporting is near and dear to my heart.
Yes, go ahead, my dear.
Well, and I'm a big fan of short, concise reports that add value, but I think insight is so important. And I always talk about how I think we're really good as internal audit on hindsight. Okay. We mastered this years and years and years ago. But adding insight, I find that a lot of executive summaries still don't do. And then foresight is extremely rare. And I almost feel like if we can't master insight, how do
you define insight?
I think for me, it's like coming back to the executive summary. When you say, we completed our audit of this process at this company at this location, and we identified 14 findings, 3 of which were whatever rating system they use, high risk or high criticality. 7 were medium, and I've lost the math, but this many were not critical. And then they might summarize some of those findings, like condition and risk or whatever they decide is important, or it can be inconsistent across whatever they do summarize.
Okay.
And they could do that for the high risk issues that they've identified, or list all of them, which to me is quite a painful thing. What does it mean to the business? We said we were going to assess governance, risk management, and internal controls over which process, whatever it is, depends on what your objective statement is. But it's so rare I find in the reports that I've seen, for the audit teams to actually say, well, this is what we see as the state of the union for governance, and this is what we see as the state of the union for risk management, and this is what we see as the state of the union for internal controls, and this is why we think this is the state because we've done all our root cause analyses, and we think this is what it means to the business, to achievement of their business objectives, or however you want to attack that.
Comfort zone. I'm hearing fear. Again, you know what? We like to conclude on things we know we could back it up with facts. When you start having us give what ifs, that's where it comes. What ifs are just very subjective. So we have to start thinking in the profession whether or not we are allowing internal auditors to dive into more subjective foresight type conclusions, because the conclusions can be different based on who's concluding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it gets unclear on how to do that. Because the way I may see things is different than how you see things. So the conclusion, when you start talking about foresight, it has to be driven by data. And foresight, yeah, and so now it gets a little tricky. What data points should you use to provide that foresight to?
But what about insight even? Even just like, what does this audit mean to the business?
Well, I think that's an easier reach, right? Because it should tie back to your objectives. The objective of your audit is to do verified blank. We did all this audit. We conclude that blank is verified.
Internal controls are designed and executed.
Designed for whatever department it is. So you got to wrap it back. It's writing an essay. It's like writing an essay.
But it's a short essay, right? It's a short essay.
It's the same framework that we've always used, right? You have an opening statement, your objective, you have your details, which are the test procedures or findings, and you conclude. Did I meet the objectives? And then you summarize. That's what
I like to flip it though. I like to have that conclusion first, and then I support it with the detail.
We do that too. We do that too, because no one reads the reports. So I give them the stuff they want up front.
Did you just see no one reads the reports?
Come on, let's not fool ourselves. See, this is what we drink the Kool-Aid. We need to be honest with ourselves.
We drink our own Kool-Aid that we made.
We need to be honest. No one reads the report except us. Let's be clear. So then now that we know that, now we could change. Because if we still start thinking, oh, I put 15 hours and 25 hours and everything, we are, all of that stuff is well written and no one reads it, what was the purpose? So let's make it readable. That's what I tell my people. I said, if I don't understand it and I'm an auditor, no one else is going to understand it. Make it so that it has to be written in a way that an intelligent person who has no idea of what's going on can pick it up and understand what was the objective, what you did, and what was the conclusion. If they cannot understand that at a glance, we're in trouble.
And I do find conclusions are lacking. I really, really do. And I'm like on my stage, podium, whatever it is, preaching that these audit conclusions should really add value and should draw some, it should add some insight to the business. Say, this is what it all means. We just spent all this time, which equates to all these dollars. We took all this time from the audit client actually doing their day-to-day business. So now we want to tell you, this is what your investment means. We can give some.
And you know what? This is where you and I could collaborate, or there is synergy in what we do. Because you have the written word, I have the spoken word, right? You really become concise in how you communicate it in writing. And I'm helping auditors to understand how to communicate it in a way that the business people can digest and
take it
develop
and understand. Because I think you have to have those skills. Yeah. writing things in a report that no one reads is not helpful. So therefore, how else are you going to communicate the results of your audit? You're going to communicate those in either one-to-one calls like this at the right level, or they're in broader meetings, whatever it is. I was talking to another client this week about executive closing meetings. And why aren't we looping back? If we assign a name, we send them a memo that says we are going to audit this whole area, this whole process under you. Why aren't we looping back with Bob or Mary, who are ultimately responsible, who we sent that audit announcement to say, this is the state of the union? Yeah.
And again, it depends on how complex an entity is. Because I'm not going to call out companies on this, but I've worked in larger organizations and you don't even know. You may not even have met the person who's in charge of that area, but
Right.
his or her name is on the report. So then how useful is that report?
I think you have to build a relationship with the person whose name is on that audit memo and on that, or the announcement, and on the report. I mean, there's just...
And that goes back to the synergy we were talking about before, the writing of the report being concise, but also the other hand is that EQ, or that leadership EQ, which allows us and gives us the tools for us to have those relationships so that the report will land on the ears of the influencers in the organization.
Right. We're going to put a link to your book on MeQ in the show notes. And I want to put the one on balance too, because I think that's so important for so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love the work that you're doing supporting professionals to obtain their certifications like CIA and CPA. So we're going to put a link to that book.
Oh, I appreciate that.
In the show notes. But I guess I want to kind of wrap this up, and I say, if you look far, far, far into the future, and you think about your legacy, because you do so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do so much. For us to find a time to sit down together usually takes months to coordinate, because we're both so busy. So, when you look far into the future, when you're kind of winding things down and you maybe not working quite so hard, and you look back on your career, what impact do you want to have left on the profession and the people that you've mentored or worked with?
I like to say leadership for all. Leadership for all. We need to lead with our hearts. We need to really have our voice be heard, because that's our power. And finding our purpose. Even though we're auditors, we are different. And we need to find the voice, our power, and our purpose. And so at the end of the day, my legacy is, I believe I've cracked some codes. Some codes. That's one of the titles of my book. Some codes. And because of that, I think we need to share. There's enough in the world that we don't have to be selfish. Passing the baton backwards. So I want the next generation, because I'm parents are immigrants, so maybe that's where it's coming from. The next generation to be better. That's what my mom always says. She wants me to be better than she was. I want the next generation of auditors to be better than I. On my shoulders, they will stand. And so that's the legacy I want to leave. Leadership for all, and voices matter.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a fantastic discussion, and I look forward to our next one.
My pleasure. This was fun. Thank you for having me. Sincerely. Thank you, friend.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. We'd love for you to stay part of our growing community, so subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're enjoying our content on platforms like iTunes or Spotify, a quick 5-star rating from you would mean the world to us. It's a small action that supports our mission immensely. Don't forget to explore the show notes for various links and join our vibrant community on all our social media platforms. Your interaction and support play a crucial role in amplifying the voices of inspiring women in audit and spreading their inspiring stories even further. Thank you for being a part of our journey, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.